Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. It's one day later. It's Fantasy Football Today, DFS. We're coming off our solo pod on Wednesday. Of course, normally that's Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And we're back already, except this time we're bigger and better because we've got the man, the myth, the legend. And I'm not just saying that facetiously. Like, he literally is in all three capacities. Mike McClure, how are you?
I am doing well. See you fired up for this podcast, the Thursday Night Football game. Thursday is just a great day. It kicks off what is always a great weekend during football season. So always love a challenge on a DFS slate, and that is what we have this week for sure.
Yeah, I hear some grumblings when we get games like this, and I'm talking about the Thursday night game. And at the end of the show, we'll talk about maybe some showdown plays and game flow and things of that nature. But some grumblings like, oh, this is such a bad game, the Rams and whatever quarterback they're going to be trotting out there. And it's like, man, we don't have many Thursday night games left. You better embrace all of this because this is pretty great because for about 6-7 months, we're not going to have anything. So, Mike, I share your sentiment there. I'm super excited. I do want to ask you before we get into this 10-game slate. And by the way, hit the like button if you're already in the chat. We appreciate that. We're going to get to Mike's top three at each position once we get to 100 likes. So if we get to 100 likes early, then we're going to do the top three early. Also, the FFT DFS contest is live, so go ahead and register for that. It's only 200 deep, so it does fill up pretty fast. And again, congratulations to @Home21, who I found out his actual name is Arthur Thomas. So congratulations, Arthur Thomas, for taking down the Week 13 FFT DFS contest. Mike, what I was going to ask you before we get to this 10-game slate is, this is an interesting one, especially relative to last week. Last week, we almost had too many options. And this week, it doesn't seem like there are enough options. And what I mean by that is there's not a lot of like stackable games, at least not games that are immediately, jump out at you like we had last week. I personally see that as sort of an advantage for us because what we're so big on, Mike, and I'm not talking about you and me necessarily, the listeners as well, of course. We're so big on just alternate roster constructions and things of that nature and just picking off pieces, skinny stacks from games that might not be so popular for people. That's sort of how I approached this slate, so I'm really excited about it. But I just want to get your sentiment because, again, it's not one of those slates where we're looking at mouth-watering totals.
Yeah, not a lot of mouth-watering totals. The one game that becomes pretty expensive to stack very quickly. Yeah, it's a tough week out there for sure. We don't have obvious running back value like we have in some of the previous weeks. I think the scores will definitely be lower. Scores needed to win contests, probably 30 plus points lower this week. So that's always an interesting thing to see. As far as where we're paying up, that'll also be interesting to see where everybody kind of pays up this week. I have one spot where I'm going to pay up again that I haven't in quite a few weeks. It's a little tease there.
Oh, nice. And by the way, speaking of teas, you mentioned that there's one game that, people are going to want to stack and that it gets pretty expensive. I sort of have two games in mind there. So I'm curious, what is that one game? Because we're starting with the highest total. That's going to be the first game we cover. Is that the game you're talking about?
That's the game I'm talking about. And when I say it gets expensive if you want the two top pieces, which would be Amon-Ra and Justin Jefferson. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good lead in to our first game, which of course is going to be Minnesota at Detroit. And listen, there are going to be weather concerns this week, but this, of course, is not one of them because this is in a dome. This is at Detroit. We know these Detroit games, Jared Goff actually flashes. Oh, of course, he's actually been good on the road a little bit here and there too, but this is like I like to call it, a curated environment. It's part of the reason we have this total. It's Vikings +2, but it's a 51.5 point total. This has been kind of moving. I think I saw it at 53 in some places. I saw it 52.5, then 52. Now it's 51.5. Now it's still an extremely high total, so I'm not really worried about it going down. But I just think it's worthy of noting that it's gone down a point or two. Mike, I really like this game for obvious reasons, and I don't think I really need to explain it. But I do think, and we saw it last week, but we've kind of been seeing it all year with the Vikings secondary in particular. They can get exposed. I mean, Mike White, even though he didn't score any touchdowns through the air, 369 passing yards against this defense. And they've been giving up a lot in the secondary. If you look at their secondary, it's just there's not a lot of good pieces there. So I think the Goff side really makes sense. I wonder what you think about the Cousins side. With all of that said, there's so many pieces in this game, right? We got Amon-Ra St. Brown. We got DJ Shark, who his snap share finally ticked up to, an elite spot last week. And then, of course, on the other side, you've got superstars like Jefferson, secondary pieces like Hawkinson and Thielen. And then, of course, Dalvin Cook is on this team as well. A lot to choose from. A lot of different types of constructions you can include. And I actually, in our solo pod, and I'll kick this over to you, I had a construction that I was talking about with the audience about it was Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Shark, and bringing it back with, basically 2 of 3 options that may or may not include Justin Jefferson, Hawkinson, Thielen, Justin Jefferson, maybe Dalvin Cook, like some 2 pieces of that. My question for you is that too much for you in terms of maybe one of your 5 lineups? Is that just sort of overstacking it, or are you cool with that type of stack? And tell me what pieces you like in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could definitely game stack it up where you have quarterback and say 3 others, whether it's 1 or 2 from his team, 1 bring back. I think that's probably fine. I'm going to have exposure to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'll probably have some Justin Jefferson. I'll have a little Adam Thielen. The guy that I will also likely have exposure to, assuming that everything's good on the injury front, Swift. 5,800 in the backfield. We don't have a ton of obvious running back value. I think he's going to catch some passes in this one. His workload actually, at least in the last game, was very encouraging to see. He does obviously lose goal line work to Jamal Williams. That's always concerning when you're trying to score touchdowns. But I do like him there. As far as stacking the game, look, it's going to be popular. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown as the most popular player on the slate, just right ahead of Denver's tight end, but he's going to be right up there as the most popular player on the slate. I'm showing Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen approaching 20% as well, but I think Amon-Ra will be clearly 30% plus. I think it's fair value on the chalk. Like I don't think it's an obvious fade situation. I think that you're playing with fire on this particular slate, trying to fade him. So I'm probably going to play about equal to the field on it. I'm probably not going to go crazy. I'm definitely not fading all the way. The other guy that we kind of have to talk about and mention a little bit is going to be Hawkinson as well.
Yeah.
Facing the former team, yes, they know how to cover him potentially, maybe not. I think that he's certainly going to be involved in this one as well. It's just a massive shootout potential on both sides. As you mentioned, the domed environment on a week where we actually do have a little weather, it's hard not to like a ton of these pieces. I just personally think that I will be sprinkling in pieces more than full-on game stacking.
Let me ask you, first of all, Hawkinson's ownership, is it trending upward? I mean, you mentioned all the popular pieces, Hawkinson and Dalvin Cook, and I'm sorry to ask you this on the fly, but are both of those guys trending sort of towards that, 12 to 15% range?
Yes, right there in that 12 to 15% range. I think that Hawkinson could be as high as 17, 18%. We'll see. I'm going to do my best to make that different at tight end because there's someone that I absolutely love, assuming everyone is active and healthy and ready to go.
And that's not from this game. That's from another game, you're saying, right?
From another game, yep.
The Cousins side, is that so? Again, for those of you that don't know, Mike usually does about 5 tournament lineups. Sometimes he plays cash as well, but usually 5 tournament lineups. Is the Cousins side of this potentially in one of those 5, or if you're stacking this, you're going the golf route?
The Cousins route would probably be there. I don't want to spoil my favorite QB yet. Let me look at the games quickly and see when that one's coming up. A couple games away, not the next game, but the game after. I will be playing one of these 2 quarterbacks, one of Goff or Cousins. It will not be my main lineup, but I will have exposure to the game to the point where I have one of the 2 quarterbacks. As far as which one I get to, if you're able to follow me on Sportsline, you'll definitely see it there at that point. It's truly going to come down to an ownership battle for me at this point. So I think that it's probably going to be Cousins that I get to. I'm pretty confident Goff's going to be meaningfully higher. Everything I'm showing right now is within 2%. So I don't know that I believe my own ownership data here. I think that Goff's going to out-own him by at least 5%, but it's suggesting it's going to be a lot closer than that, which probably makes a lot of sense because I think Minnesota is one of the more popular bets in the betting market this week.
Okay. I think we covered that. Did we miss a player? I mean, we certainly didn't miss a play. Well, let me ask you this before we move on to Jets at the Bills. Speaking of some potential weather concerns, DJ Shark, I don't know that I got you to talk about it all. Is he a guy? I mean, he's certainly at a price that makes sense. Is he a guy that you're going to be including in your stacks or your bringbacks?
Probably not. And now, if I were playing 20 plus lineups, yeah. In my 5 lineup builds, probably not going to get there this week. Can't rule it out, but probably not going to get there.
Okay. And again, DJ Shark, 4,300. And for that reason, he's probably going to be a piece that people are going to want to throw in there, especially to offset some guys like Justin Jefferson, who were very expensive. So is he getting some popularity, Mike?
Let me search quickly. Not really. About 4%.
Okay, great. All right, so let's move on. We covered that game. Certainly, so many players you can find different ways to stack, and I'm sure some of those people that we just talked about will be featured in Mike's top 3. Let's go to Jets Bills. So I mentioned weather concerns. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too bad. I mean, we are likely. It looks like right now we're likely to see snow. At this point, it doesn't seem like that's going to be super detrimental to the game itself. Mike, maybe you could just shed some light on what you think there. But we got the Jets plus 10 at the Bills. It's a 43-point total. Pretty underwhelming total. I talked on Tuesday, Mike, about Mike White and how, I still like the price, especially if you pair him with Garrett Wilson, who's still under 6K. I don't know. Maybe I'll back off of that, but because I know you're kind of a fan of the Bills, maybe really kind of putting their foot down on the throat of the New York Jets in this one. So tell me how you feel about this game. Just one issue that I do want to point out, it looks like Michael Carter might be healthy, so we kind of have to see how that Zonovan Knight thing is going to play out. I'd like to know if you think Zonovan Knight still presents value at 5,100, but more importantly, are you playing guys from this game?
I'm probably going to be off of this game. I like the under quite a bit in this game. We're going to have some weather, rain, snow mix. I think that the Jets side struggles offensively in this game. So I'm mostly off of it at this point. Knight was fine. I liked him. The price points come up. He's been great in these last few games. I don't know if he can do it again against this defense. I'm not excluding him from the player pool, but not someone that I've got locked in at this point. So monitoring it, but at some point, I don't see that volume sticking there. If we've got Carter, we've got Robinson. It seems way too fragile to me.
And how about the Mike White to Garrett Wilson? Or forget about Mike White for a second. Is Garrett Wilson at 5,900? Does he still present a value here?
He probably does, just because of the target volume. He's probably fine because of the target volume. I wouldn't count on him scoring touchdowns. Obviously got there last week without it. I wouldn't expect a repeat of that. He had 2 very, very friendly matchups with Chicago and Minnesota through the air. This one, while this Buffalo team isn't as difficult as it was last year, it's not an easy matchup like the last 2 that he saw. So I'm probably going to be off of Garrett Wilson personally, just based on what we saw the last few weeks. You're paying $1,600 more for him now than you were against Chicago.
So a couple guys on the Bills side that do present value, and I do want to point out that the Bills implied total is 26.75. So it's reasonably high on this slate, certainly within the top 5. I assume you're not going to speculate between James Cook and Devin Singletary, but I do want to point out James Cook is 4,600. The real guy I want to ask you about here, though, is Isaiah McKenzie at 4,200. Is that a dart you're just not willing to throw, or is that something you might want to get involved with?
I don't mind it. There are weeks where he's certainly not going to be involved a ton, but I don't mind it. He does have a ton of upside. I think the real thing here is just monitoring the weather. I think this game could be ugly. It could be a sloppy game. I don't hate it, but don't love it.
Okay. Speaking of games that maybe you probably are more on the hate side than the love side, Ravens +2 at the Steelers. It's a 36.5-point total. Now, I could be wrong here now that I think about it, because Mark Andrews is in this game. And we had somebody very smart in the chat who knows you very well, Mike, apparently, because I'm trying to find it's M. Bruno, who says, sounds like Mike is talking about Andrews when you referred to a tight end you really like. So is M. Bruno right, Mike?
He is. They are. I like Mr. Mark Andrews. My favorite quarterback of the week is in this game. It is Tyler Huntley.
Wow. Okay. Tell me more, because I feared Tyler Huntley, because I just, especially at Pittsburgh, it doesn't seem like he can do much with his arm, especially with this receiver core outside of Mark Andrews. And we know, Pittsburgh's been playing a little bit better. It's a very low total. But my assumption, Mike, is that you like the rushing floor with Tyler Huntley, and you expect him to play a little bit better than he did last week.
I do, yes. I think we've got a great rushing floor. I think he scores a rushing touchdown in this game. I think he targets Mark Andrews a ton. We've seen him fill in at times before. I like this spot for him personally. I like that he's in the same price point as Jared Goff. I could still stack Jared Goff's receivers and other pieces from that game while still capturing Tyler Huntley's ability to run the football with his legs. If he does anything at all with his arm, I like this spot a lot for him. So I don't think a lot of people are going to go there with me. I think I'm going to be kind of in my own little world on this one, which is great. I like that. I do think that we have the scenario where we're looking at 40 rushing yards, potentially a rushing touchdown. Hopefully we get 150 to 200 yards and a touchdown through the air. And we're sitting pretty as long as a lot of that work goes to Mark Andrews. So yes, I like Huntley. I think that the drop off from Lamar in this particular offense may not be as big as we think.
See, that's an interesting point because I think I kind of agree with you there. And with Tyler Huntley having a week to prepare, I mean, I guess obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers get a week to scheme against Tyler Huntley, but I don't know that scheming is much different than what you would do with Lamar Jackson. So, Mike, I think you make a really good point that, and that's no disrespect to Lamar Jackson, just the way he's been playing and what the numbers he's been putting up. You might be right. It might not be much of a drop off. Let me ask you this, and maybe you cleared this up already, but is it Tyler Huntley to Mark Andrews? In other words, is that how you're playing it? Or are there situations in one of your lineups where you're playing Tyler Huntley naked or with maybe somebody like discount Demarcus Robinson at 4,000?
It's likely going to be Huntley naked or Huntley to Mark Andrews. I like the target distribution to Mark Andrews here. We've seen a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. We've seen some of this in the past. I'm trying to look back through some of Huntley's game logs, from last year when he played. I'm seeing rushing yard games of 72, 54, 73, 45, 40. Scored 2 touchdowns rushing in one of those games with the 73 yards. I like this spot. In a couple of those games, he still threw north of 200 yards. I think this is a really good spot for him. And that's where I'm going this week. Early ownership indication does not suggest the field is going with me. We'll see how much that changes between now and then. But that is where I'm going this week. And it's either probably going to be really good or one of those weeks where we return $0. And you know what? That's the way I play, and I'm okay with that, right? So
exactly. I mean, that's how you are supposed to play tournaments. You're supposed to look for your ceiling and not worry about your floor. I think you've actually got me convinced to play Tyler Huntley. My personal preference is to go with your version where it's Tyler Huntley naked, and I don't mess with any of the receivers or Mark Andrews, and I just hope for the best. I mean, I do think Demarcus Robinson at 4,000 is pretty great value given the amount of targets he's been getting. He caught 7 of 8 targets last week. And again, 4,000 is just a good price. I do want to point out Deontay Johnson did not practice today. This is Thursday. He did not practice. So we'll have to monitor that. Let me ask you this. Is there a run back scenario, whether you're stacking or not? But let's, whatever. Anybody on the Pittsburgh side that you like? I kind of like Deontay Johnson at 5,100, but now that he didn't practice Thursday, I wonder maybe is George Pickens. Obviously, I mean, he presents some value if Deontay Johnson is out at his price, right?
He does. If Johnson is out, I could see myself getting there. Other than that, I could get crazy in one scenario, but I don't know that. I'm trying to look at my data quickly to see if it's actually viable. I wanted to say I would be crazy and still play double tight end with Andrews and Freiermuth on the bring back with Huntley. No, I've got a unique lineup right there for sure. Nobody else is doing that.
Yes.
Probably not going to get there, though. It doesn't look as viable spending that much with 2 of those tight ends there. So Freiermuth is okay. Probably going to be a lot of either Huntley naked or Huntley with Andrews.
Okay. I think we can move on. I don't really like much on the Pittsburgh side, but I do want to monitor the Deontay thing. I think Pickens or Freiermuth, if Deontay Johnson is out, become pretty great values at 5K and sub 5K. Freiermuth for 4,500 on DraftKings and George Pickens 5,000. Let's move to a game that actually has a total that's 10 points higher than the Ravens at the Steelers, and it's the Browns at the Bengals. I suspect this is going to be a relatively popular game for obvious reasons, right? Burrow has all of his all of his weapons back, other than Hayden Hurst, who may not play in this game. And so, by the way, his backup is Will Cox, and he's 2,700. I think there's probably, if you're going to go down in that 2K-ish range, that's not the where you want to go. I think there's probably other options if you really want to get cheap at tight end. But Burrow stacks, I mean, I think obviously they're in play. I think a lot of people are going to be playing them. I like Burrow to chase this week, but certainly Burrow to Higgins is in play. Mixon is in play. I think Kareem Hunt is an interesting dart throw if you're trying to find value. I think Deshaun Watson, he had 11 touches last week. I think Deshaun Watson could kind of lean on him if it's a negative game script, which, by the way, that's what I expect. How are you playing this one? Are you playing this one?
Yeah, I like Burrow to chase for sure. I think this is a great spot on Jamar Chase. I still think he's going to be underpriced at 7,900. I think he's an $8,600 wide receiver. Yeah, I like the spot for Chase. So I think what we saw from him last week was kind of the floor in terms of target volume. 8 targets, game 1. Remember, Kansas City has a lot of longer sustained drives that eat clock and really shorten the game in those ways, which is why everyone looks at those games and it's like, oh, we have to hammer the over, offensive efficiency, et cetera, right? And these games always seem to end 24-21, 27-24. They're not the massive 40-point shootouts. It's because possessions are limited. I don't think that's necessarily the case quite as much here. So I like Jamar Chase a ton. Yeah, I think this could be a potential 2-touchdown day for Jamar Chase. So he's one of my favorite receivers for sure.
Is this a game where you would stack Burrow to Chase and somebody else on the Cincinnati side, or would it just be Burrow to Chase?
It would just be Burrow to Chase. Last week I stacked it and had a lot of success doing it. The issue with it is, like, when we really want to incorporate those running back stacks as well, where we're just simply trying to capture all the offensive scoring, you're only typically doing that when we're talking about a backup running back situation, something less than 6K.
Yeah.
When you're having to spend more to do it, you really, really eat into the upside of doing that. So I'm not going to recommend doing anything there other than, if you wanted to stack that game like that, it would honestly probably just be Kareem Hunt in the running back spot, as a bring back. But as far as Cincy, for me this week, it won't be double stacks. It'll be just directly to Chase.
And let's talk about the running backs real quick before we move on to the next game, because Nick Chubb is 7,800. I do think he could get game scripted out of this game, but then again, this could be a back and forth where Cleveland's very competitive. 7,800 is tough. I know this week I'm really looking to pay up more at receiver than I am at running back. So, I don't know that I'm paying that. I think Kareem Hunt at 4,600 is a reasonable dart throw. It sounds like you do as well, because you just mentioned him. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I assume you're not interested in either of those. Amari is 6,200. DPJ is 4,900.
Yeah, not a ton of interest. If you want to take a shot on DPJ, fine. The issue is, I wonder how much chemistry is really there with Deshaun. I actually kind of preferred him with Jacoby Brissett playing. Yeah, I think that I would rather take a wait and see approach on that. I'd rather, obviously we don't have a ton of time left in the season. You typically want to be predictive and be ahead of things like that. But on a full slate like this, I would rather see it first from the Cleveland side before I speculate too much on it.
And by the way, we had a question from Thomas Scarpati. Baltimore running backs in play. I'll answer that and then I'll kick it to you, Mike. The answer is no for me. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I would say no for me. I think the things that are likely to happen is Huntley's likely to find some success with his legs. If not, they're likely game scripted into spots where they have more obvious passing work. And yeah, I don't like him at all.
Okay, and a couple comments here. Derek Graham, Kareem Hunt at 4,600 for value. Yeah, I like that play. It's very speculative. Don't get me wrong, because he hasn't been a touch monster this entire year. Last week, he did have a slight spike in touches with 11 overall touches. So I think Kareem Hunt, from a game script standpoint, certainly makes sense. If you think, listen, it's going to be the Burrow show and they're just going to put up a bunch of points, Kareem Hunt probably finds himself on the field a lot more. So I think if you're stacking the Cincinnati side, I think Kareem Hunt makes sense if that's the game script you want to go with. And we touched on that a little bit earlier. Thanks for the question, Derek. Grey Goose Hayes, this is a good question, because sometimes I forget to kind of emphasize cash. He says, I'm thinking Burrow as the top cash QB this week. I think that's a great play. But Mike, in cash, would Burrow be your favorite play?
It'll be Huntley still in all formats for me, just because of the salary savings and what it allows you to do. I think that the most popular quarterback in cash for the field is going to be Jared Goff this week.
Mhm.
So you're getting a little different with Burrow. You just, when you spend that much, you got to be right everywhere else.
And let me ask you this before we move on from this game, because this is a pretty important game in the scheme of things, because it's one of those that might have a back and forth and a high total. So we have a question from M. Bruno. He says, Cleveland is awful versus the run. True. Mixon could have a big day. So my question for you is, you already answered the question of, hey, you don't want to have a Burrow to Chase and Mixon stack. And you gave out like the really good reason why you shouldn't do that. But if you're not stacking Burrow to Chase and you just want to get a piece of this game, Mixon coming out of the concussion protocol and likely playing on Sunday, of course, that's still a pretty solid play here, right?
Yes, it's a fantastic matchup for them. The one has to ask the question: does Samaje Perine being successful eat into Mixon's workload at all at some point? I don't know that it does necessarily. I think that they still feed him. It's a frustrating thing for Mixon. He hasn't been, he had one great game. He hadn't been great a lot of the time. It's a great matchup for him. I'm always a little skeptical on it just because I think Burrow wants to throw more, and I think they want to let him throw more. I don't mind it. Mixon's going to be popular. The issue for me is he's also going to be popular. The time when I really want us to be playing Joe Mixon is when he's not necessarily going to be popular. When it's like obvious that everyone wants to play Burrow and Chase, that's when I want to play Mixon and just kind of bet on some of that, touchdown variance. I don't think that's the case here. I think more people are playing Mixon than Burrow or Chase this week. Yeah, I'm showing Mixon as the most popular running back on the slate.
Wow. Okay. So, I think you're probably right about that. I'm probably going to be off Mixon. He's not like my fade play on my cheat sheet or anything, but I'm probably going to be off Mixon. I'm going to be very interested in the Burrow to Chase stacks. And by the way, Mike, thanks for watching the show. Everybody, hopefully you've already hit the like button. Please do if you haven't already. But you asked, so you would play, you're talking to Mike, obviously, Huntley in both GPP and cash. He definitely said yes to that. For me, I would probably, I'm going to play Huntley in some GPPs. But for me, I think Mike's sort of second option is better for me personally. I'll probably have Goff and Burrow in some of those cash lineups where I'm probably only going to do one or two. So it's very likely that Goff or Burrow find themselves in my primary cash lineup. But again, Mike likes Huntley both ways. And it certainly makes sense, right? Because he does have that floor. He does have the low floor with the rushing yards, and he does have the great price. So thank you for your question, Mike, and everybody out there. Let's move to Jags +4 at the Titans. This is a 41-point total. There's a lot we need to find out in these games, Mike, and we all know, right? Especially this time of year, things change from Thursday to Saturday to Sunday. So everybody, take all of what we're saying. We usually kind of build in the contingency plans. Like we talked about it last week. If Mixon was going to be out again, you're going to want to put Samaje Perine in your lineup. So don't just listen to the plays, but listen to some of the, the injury stuff too, because we try to account for that stuff as well. And of course, I do have some people tweeting at me with kind of like last minute plays. And sometimes I put some, last minute plays during our final bets show on the early edge at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So more information coming. But with that said, I think Trevor Lawrence is playing. He says he's playing, but he does have that foot issue. I think if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, this game is pretty much a nothing for me outside of Derrick Henry. I think if Trevor Lawrence plays and he appears to be healthy, I think you could do a lot of different things in this game. Maybe my favorite thing would probably be a skinny stack with like a Christian Kirk and Derrick Henry. What say you on this game?
Yeah, this one for me is going to be all about Derrick Henry. He has absolutely crushed this team, just like he does to the Texans in the division. A game they really need to win, kind of. I mean, they're going to win the division. They're fine there. They've lost 2 in a row, get to come back home. They've had changes in the front office over the last week. This seems like an obvious smash spot for Derrick Henry where he's got the 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, I say this often, and we're usually pretty good about identifying the right times to play these people. Last week you were fantastic about fading, Derrick Henry. I think this is the week you play Derrick Henry here. We play, it's kind of like when the Titans typically, and some of these other teams, there are certain teams where you don't really back them when they're favored. You love backing them when they're underdogs. Derrick Henry's the guy that we don't play him when he's $9,000. When Derrick Henry is $7,900, you say thank you for the discount and you play him, right? So
Mhm.
I love Derrick Henry this week. I think he's a top running back. The knock on him on DraftKings is always PPR site, has limited upside in the passing game, blah, blah. The good news is on DraftKings, you get the 100-yard bonus. I would say Derrick Henry is a near lock for the 100-yard bonus this week.
Yeah, I mean, outside of it, like, listen, he's been very inefficient, but this is a nice matchup. Last week, not only did I fade him on my cheat sheet, but on the early edge when we do our prop show, which of course is tomorrow, Friday at 4:00. I had an under on him of 86.5 yards. Actually, I gave that play out on Sunday's Final Bets show, in all candor there. But the point is, it was a bad matchup last week with Jordan Davis coming back. We know he had an injury like 4 or 5 weeks ago that maybe he's still shaking off, but this is such a good matchup. I absolutely, and I agree with you. It does feel like a must win for the Tennessee Titans to get back on track. So I think this is definitely a Derrick Henry game. Let me ask you this. If Trevor Lawrence plays, are you expecting enough points where you might consider some guys on the Jacksonville side? I'm not playing Travis Etienne this week. I don't think it's a good matchup for him, but maybe guys like Christian Kirk as just a one-off play, or Zay Jones, or maybe even Robert Woods on the other side, given that Treylon Burks is probably not going to play.
I don't mind it. I think the upside is still honestly limited on Robert Woods. I think a good game for him at this point is 4 catches, 45 yards and a touchdown, which, at the price point, you're probably okay with, right? But that's like a ceiling game at this point in this offense. So I think it's more about Henry than anything else. If you want to have a bring back and speculate on one of the receivers on the Jacksonville side, I don't hate that. I think it's okay. I think that you should just understand what you're dealing with Trevor Lawrence and the injury. If he's out or gets knocked out of this game, it could look very, very, very bad on that Jacksonville side. So if you've got a receiver that you've isolated there that you really like, I don't think it's the worst call, because I do think that they're going to be in that game script, but not something that's really on my radar as of right now in the week.
Okay. I think we can move on. If you have questions about this game or anybody else, let us know. Let's move on to the Texans at the Cowboys. This one is so interesting for so many different reasons. I mean, first of all, on the Houston side, there's a lot of people that are injured. Brandon Cooks is not going to play. Nico Collins missed practice today. Again, today being Thursday, if you're listening on a Friday or a Saturday. And so it doesn't look like he's going to play. And to me, that opens up some value for me, not so much on Philip Dorsett. I'm not a really big fan of Philip Dorsett. I do like Chris Moore quite a bit, and I think Chris Moore has actually been productive this season. So I want to get your opinion on whether or not you think Dorsett or Chris Moore are decent plays if Nico Collins is out with Brandon Cooks. But on the other side of the ball, we have the Cowboys with basically, depending on where you look, between a 30 and a 31-point game total. And that's a lot. That's the highest on this slate. And it's just a weird game because they're also favored by 17.5. And so I'm just wondering, are you getting pieces of this game? Is this stack or any of these players on the Cowboys side in one of your 5 lineups? And if so, and I imagine they are, but if so, who are they?
Yeah, on the Cowboys side, the one guy that I want to try to get to a little bit is Tony Pollard. Now, the question is do we run into a scenario where we still are just feeding Zeke at all times? I don't know, but the price point, the matchup, I like it. Not going to be a core lineup piece. The only core lineup pieces for me, you already mentioned the name though. I like Dorsett. I'm not going to be all in on Dorsett. I like Chris Moore. I actually played Chris Moore last week, and I played 5 lineups on DraftKings. I had him in 2 of the 5 that I played. Didn't have a great game, had a big catch at the end of it. I think that this is going to be Chris Moore and Philip Dorsett season. I think that they're going to get peppered with targets. I know the team total is incredibly low. I know that they should get blown out. I know it should be difficult. I think there are still fantasy points to be had there, and I think they're so low risk, right? So Chris Moore, 3,400, Philip Dorsett, 3,000. Like you're going to see a lot of people struggling to find salary savings this week. I think that this is where the clear and obvious value is on the Houston side.
Totally agree. And again, I'm going to have Chris Moore in a lot of my lineups. It's funny. I think I might have something against Philip Dorsett because a few weeks ago, I was really close to a takedown. And when I say really close, what I mean in a pretty big single entry, what I mean is I needed Dorsett to do something. And he was my like low cost option. And, he's just been so inefficient. Actually I had recorded what they've done on the season. So Dorsett, he's caught 12 of 27 targets, to speak to how inefficient he's been. Now, granted, his quarterbacks have been really bad in terms of throwing catchable balls. So that's not all on him, but Chris Moore, who typically lines up in the slot versus outside. And so I think he's going to enjoy a little bit more success with Davis Mills. But Dorsett, 12 for 27, 180 yards and a touchdown. Chris Moore, on the other hand, 27 catches on 40 targets, 314 yards and 2 touchdowns. And we've seen him on prime time. We've actually seen him flash. I can't remember what game that was, Mike, but it was about 3 weeks ago where Chris Moore caught maybe 4 weeks ago where he caught a few balls. Let me ask you this before we leave the Houston side of this. These tight ends, they got brought up on our Tuesday solo pod. Brevin Jordan, he's 2,500. Jordan Akins is on this team. Brevin Jordan and Jordan Akins, they do get targets, but I'm assuming, and OJ Howard was inactive last week, so I don't think he's really in play. I'm assuming you're not messing with that, right? Because you're just going to be on the other low-end pieces at the receiver position.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the low-end receiver positions, and I've already locked up one of my tight ends for the most part. So, yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Like, if you're down to just needing savings and you don't like tight end anyway, and you do have, say a $4,000 receiver, $4,500 receiver that you'd much rather play, I don't hate punting the tight end spot with one of these guys at 2,500. I think that's fine. But I don't think you should be playing Chris Moore and one of these tight ends. Like I would not do that.
Yeah. And just to be clear on the Cowboys side, before we move to the Eagles at the Giants, which players are you stacking Dak, and which players are you playing on the Cowboys side?
I'm not stacking Dak. I have no interest in playing Dak personally. It could it could come back to bite me. I just think there are a number of ways they can score. They probably have some short fields. They might score defensively. We know that Zeke gets touches in the red zone. Pollard's probably going to get some. This, to me, projects as a game where Dak is not finishing the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. Okay. Any other players I missed on the Cowboys side, Mike?
No, I don't think so, honestly. Let me check one thing quickly. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to just take an absolute flyer, I say an absolute flyer. It's not like a crazy play, but you could play Dalton Schultz if you wanted to at tight end. Kind of hope that some of that early game goes that way. Things like that. But I think the scenario, I don't want to get too specific on there and what I mean by that and what I see. What I see in like a Dalton Schultz is I see like at some point in that game, obvious run situation. Everyone knows it's there. It's a play action play. You get Schultz for 35 yards over the middle, things like that, just to kind of extend drives. I think that this sets up as a spot where that could exist for him. Kind of middling price point, 4,400. You're not paying up. It's not a value play. If I had to play a Cowboy, that's probably where I'd go.
Yeah, and for the record, if you wanted to just completely fade this game and pay up for defense, the Cowboys defense is 3,800. Not that they're going to simulate exactly what the Browns did last week, but if any defense had the potential to do that, of course, it is the Cowboys, who their pressure rate's number one in the league, their sack rate number one in the league. So again, we talked about it, Mike, on the Tuesday pod. Paying up for defense, especially this time of year when people are just scanning all the way down, which I do as well. It might be a good idea to really get yourself some points on the field, who are, people who are paying 2,200, 2,400 for defenses. With that said, we're going to go to Eagles Giants, but first we're going to take a break and we're going to hear a word from our partners.
You'd be Mrs. Dutton.
I would.
Seems we're neighbors. I've acquired the Strafford Ranch.
Well, this is the Yellowstone, and you have no rights here.
Jacob, you can't start a range war.
Range war's already started.
From 1923, new series streaming December 18th, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Don't stop watching. Leo Messi, the man, the myth, the legend, Messi! The GOAT. Utterly explosive! The UEFA Champions League. Stream PSG matches live February on Paramount Plus.
And we are back. My name is Nejad. That's Mike McClure. This is our Week 14 game-by-game preview. And next, We're going to stay in the NFC East. We just left the Cowboys. We're going to go to the Eagles at the Giants. Really, probably a pretty big game for the Giants. And shout out to the Giants and Commanders who get flexed into a night game next Sunday, which I'm only pointing that out because the idea that my Washington Commanders and the New York Football Giants are being flexed into a primetime spot is something that's evidence of this season just being pretty wacky, frankly, because I'm just super excited about that. That's not something that normally happens. But Eagles are a 7-point favorite at New York, 44.5 point total. There is some weather that may come into play here. Saquon Barkley was limited in Thursday's practice, so that's certainly something to monitor. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but again, if he's out for some reason, I mean, Matt Breida and I guess it's Gary Brightwell are the backups for Saquon Barkley. Like I said, there might be some weather to contend with. I see the Eagles winning this game pretty comfortably. I don't know that I'm betting this game necessarily, but the Giants are kind of banged up on the defensive end. They have no offensive weapons whatsoever at this point. And the way Jalen Hurts is playing, I just think the Eagles are in a really good spot. Now, that doesn't mean I like Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I don't know that I'm playing any of them. And Mike, I want to get your opinion there. To me, this seems like a Miles Sanders game.
Yeah, I think it could be more of a Miles Sanders game. I want to always like certain players here. Like no one's going to play AJ Brown. I think that he's always an elite tournament option. I don't have anything in this game, honestly. Like I'm running through all my scenarios, running through all the different builds. I just crunched another 150 lineups. The only person I have, I think, in this game is Miles Sanders. And that's coming in at like 5%. I got Devontae Smith at about 2%. That's literally all I've got. I've got a little bit of Devontae Smith, a little bit of Miles Sanders, but we're talking crunching 150 lineups and we're showing up in, less than 15 of them.
Yeah. I mean, my thought here is if you wanted to take a stab in a big, let's say you're in a 20 max and you want to have a couple lineups with Jalen Hurts, I don't mind the Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown stack because again, on this slate in this game, nobody's going to pay up 8,100 to 8,000. So go ahead and do that if you want. But I also think that you're getting a huge discount at Devontae Smith, whose targets have really been picking up over the last 4 or 5 games. So I think Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith, we know that the Giants are very aggressive on defense. They play a lot of man coverage. They blitz a lot. I mean, we've seen these games where Devontae Smith, and by the way, Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball. Like he's literally like placing it in people's hands 50 yards down the field. So can I see a scenario if the weather's, decent that Jalen Hurts drops 2 to Devontae Smith for 2 house calls? Yeah, I can absolutely see that. So I'm not playing that in a primary single entry or anything, but I think if you wanted to get a little speculative, a little contrarian, you do Jalen Hurts to maybe naked or Jalen Hurts to one of those 2 receivers. I don't think you need to run it back with anybody. I'm not really interested in playing Darius Slayton against this secondary. I'm Isaiah Hodgins, Daniel Bellinger, and I'm not going to play Saquon Barkley either. So it's a big no thank you here. And Mike, it sounds like a big no thank you for you. So it sounds like we can just move to these 4 o'clock games.
Yeah, no, I think we move on. Like I said, just AJ Brown, I'm projecting single digit ownership. Go for it if you like it, but it's very hit or miss.
Absolutely. All right. Well, speaking of hit or miss, the 4 o'clock games, there's 1 405 games and there's 2 425 games. There's a hit team, the Kansas City Chiefs, playing at a miss team, the Denver Broncos. The implied point total for Kansas City, 26.5. The implied total for Denver, 17, very low, but not as low as Denver's was last week. I guess that was against the Ravens. It was 15. And they didn't even get to 15 last week. So I don't really know what to say about Denver, but here's the reality. There's 2 guys that present really, really tremendous value. Arguably 3 guys. If Cortland Sutton is out, Jerry Jeudy at 5,400 seems like great value, Mike. And of course, Greg Dulcich at 3,400, who had just an incredible target share last week and did a lot with it, was super efficient with it. Dulcich at 3,400, Jerry Jeudy at 5,400. Do you like either of those plays? And is there a possibility you're actually stacking the Kansas City side or pulling any pieces from the Kansas City side?
So Dulcich, yeah, you got to love him. He's going to be the second most popular player on the slate. It may be the first. It's going to be between him and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown and Dulcich, the 2 most popular players. For good reason, though. They're in great spots. The volume should be there, so I like them. The other piece there's 2 other pieces I like on Denver. I'm not going to get to Jerry Jeudy. I don't mind it, but I think he's going to have enough attention. I'm not going to quite get there. What about Hinton?
Say that. That was the third guy I was going to suggest. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, Kendall Hinton, just the risk is so much lower. The extra 2,000 savings from Judy, like, yes, he's not Jerry Judy. I'm not trying to say that at all. But I do like saving the $2,000 here in this particular game. I think you need it a lot this week. So we've seen a couple of spots for him where he had, 5 to 10 targets in that range. When he gets targets, he's actually been relatively efficient with some of those targets, as efficient as you can be in that offense. So I think that the opportunity to throw the football is certainly going to be there against Kansas City. So, yeah, I like him. And then same thing for Latavius Murray. He's just too cheap. There's not a ton of obvious value. So I think there are scenarios where he can catch 5 passes out of the backfield.
Yeah, and Kendall Hinton, we actually I know I was big on him in week 12 at Carolina, and we saw it there, 5 for 9, had a handful of yards, and I believe he dropped, if not one, maybe 2 touchdown passes or
Yep.
I mean, near touchdowns in that game. So yeah, if Sutton is out, which it's certainly trending to be, I don't know that, Mike, he hasn't been declared out officially yet, as far as you know, right?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is, I don't think he's playing, and I think Kendall Hinton and Judy are probably some pretty good plays, but that is quite the discount on Kendall Hinton. Let me ask you on the Kansas City side. This is your team. This is not a slate where I'm probably not going to play Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce. If I was going to play a contrarian stack, I'd probably defer to that Philly Giants game that we just talked about, that Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown or Devontae Smith stack. Are you interested at all in Patrick Mahomes stacked or Patrick Mahomes naked, or pulling Isaiah Pacheco out of here?
Yeah, I'm going to pull Isaiah Pacheco out of here. He hasn't had fewer than 14 targets or rushing attempts in the last 4 games. Certainly having more than that in terms of overall touches. I think this is a spot where they feed him just a little bit. So considering there's not a lot of obvious running back value out there at this point, yeah, Pacheco a little bit. I think that at 5,700, he's going to make my player pool for sure.
Yeah, I think 5,700 is a pretty good value as a 9.5 point favorite at Denver. Okay, so let's move on to the next game. So let's do the Bucs plus 3.5 at the 49ers. I don't think that there's going to be a lot to talk about in this game. It's a 37.5 point total. Oh, and okay, so I'm looking at Given to Liv's comment. I'm going to read it out loud. Always a bonus when the day's done and I can tune in live from the UK. What are my favorite DFS gents saying about Van Jefferson and Foster Moreau tonight? You'll get to that at the end, ? Wow, you read our mind. That's exactly right. We're going to get to that at the end. We'll answer the Van Jefferson and Foster Moreau question right after we do our cheat sheet in our top 3. By the way, if you haven't already hit the like button, hit the like button. Bucs at Panthers. Bucs are 3.5 point dogs. Excuse me, Bucs at the Niners. 37.5 point total. Not a lot to like here, obviously. But then again, Christian McCaffrey at 8,500 with a quarterback that's probably going to be checking it down to him a lot. Is he on your radar at all? He's not on mine. But I don't think any of the passing options are on my radar either. Even George Kittle at 4,300, not interested. I'm not interested on anybody on the Tampa Bay side. If anything, I like the Niners defense, which I believe is either 3,100 or 3,200. Anything in this game, Mike? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, because Chief was barking.
Chief was barking, yes. So that's why we were on mute. So as far as this game, yeah, you nailed it. The only thing I could get to is defenses. I could make the case for both of the defenses in this game if you want to speculate on a tough day for Brock Purdy. I think it's fine. Go for it. I think we are looking at a game where first team to 20 wins the game. I think that's pretty clear. So yeah, I don't mind it, but I can't get there. McCaffrey projects just fine. It's okay. The issue is the guys you're fading him for, like it's Derrick Henry's in a much better spot. Dalvin Cook's in a better spot. I don't think I don't think there's a ton to gain there. I think that, Mixon is potentially likely to outscore him still. Like, I don't think that you're gaining a ton of leverage at all by trying to make a play like McCaffrey this week.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Chris Gillentine says, hit that like button, boys and girls. Thank you for that, Chris. Okay, so we can move on. We're not going to spend any time on a game that we're not going to have any players in. So I do agree, though, that Bucs defense is quite contrarian. Against Brock Purdy, it certainly makes sense. They're 2,900, and the 49ers defense, which also makes sense, perhaps a little bit more sense, in my opinion, at home, they're 3,200. So this might be a week to pay up for defense. Maybe you find the money to, you go down to Kendall Hinton instead of Jerry Jeudy that you were planning on playing, and you got some extra money to spread around in a lot of different places, including at the defensive position. So that's just one example of probably 15 we can come up with. But that was the latest game we covered, so I've just mentioned that. But let's go to the last game before we go to your top three, Mike, and we go to our cheat sheet. Carolina at Seattle. Now, this is a 44.5 point total, 44 depending on where you look. The Panthers are 4.5 point dogs. Just a reminder to everybody, because all these Carolina Panthers quarterbacks are going everywhere. Baker Mayfield might play tonight. It's Sam Darnold at the quarterback position. So I think that is kind of important, because I think maybe if you thought you wanted to, I kind of want to stack this game. Geno Smith is at a good price. You could stack him with Metcalf or Lockett. You could double stack him with Noah Fant. And I think a DJ Moore run back, listen, it's DJ Moore. So we know these games might not go well, but he's hit some ceiling games before. And I think with Sam Darnold, it's possible he could hit a ceiling game again. How do you feel about this game? Is it a stay away? Do you like the Geno Smith stack?
I don't mind the game. Look, you can play DJ Moore if you want to. I think that's fine. I think he's going to be, let's see, I thought he was going to be popular. About 10 to 12%. Not overly popular. Certainly not like single digits by any means. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett will both be lower owned. It's just more difficult to get to Lockett and Metcalf when you've got guys like Amon St. Brown, for example, that I think are just going to take so much ownership, and people want to get parts of those games. So my favorite play in this game is Tyler Lockett. This projects to be, he has the number one individual matchup of the week. Here, I think this is a potential spot for a 2-touchdown game for Tyler Lockett. So I'll be speculating on that, likely through betting some of the player props mostly. He will make his way into a lineup or two. I don't think it's a scenario where he makes 5 lineups. Like typically when I tell you about these players, some of them are like, I'm playing them in all 5. I can't get there this week on that, but I do think he has a ton of upside in this matchup.
And Noah Fant, first of all, if you are stacking Geno, would you stack him, let's say, obviously with Lockett, but would you double stack in this game on this slate with Noah Fant, who sort of separated himself from Will Dissly? I'm just trying to find really a cheap tight end in maybe a game script where the Panthers keep up a little bit. And so maybe Geno can feed both of these guys, but I also might just be pushing a button that I don't need to push. Regardless, Noah Fant at 3,100, regardless of stacks, is that something that you'd consider, or there's too many tight ends in other places that you like?
No, I actually like Noah Fant after looking at him. He's always been super, super talented. And I'm glad that he's finally getting a little work there. I like him quite a bit here. So it's, there's another tight end that I'll mention on my cheat sheet that we didn't mention already, but if I could make a add a fourth tight end to my rankings, Noah Fant would be number 4 for me. Okay,
good to know, because I think I'm going to be pretty big on Noah Fant this week, at least in my, I just have a feeling about this Geno Smith. I think I'm going to be stacking him, a couple different ways. This is one of those games, Mike, where like obviously we know like people are going to stack Burrow. People are going to stack Goff or, maybe Cousins. There's going to be like a lot of places people go, and I'm going to go those places to some degree too. I'll try to get different with my roster constructions, but I think given how efficient Geno Smith has been, and that, the Seahawks are very hungry for these wins too. And I know every team is hungry, but like the Seahawks really need to keep pace with the 49ers and all the wild card teams in the NFC East. So the efficiency is so good. Even though the Panthers secondary has been playing a little bit better, I could see a game where Geno tosses a few touchdown passes. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But what we don't have to wait for, Mike, and I don't know that we're at 100 likes yet, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. Let's do your top 3 at each position. Are you ready for that?
I am ready for that. The only one that's a little, yeah, I'm ready for it.
All right. So we do your top 3 at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And then we're going to do our cheat sheet, my cheat sheet, and then Mike's cheat sheet. And then we're going to just touch on showdown before we get out of here. But Mike, without further ado, let's get your top 3 at each position.
Quarterback, number 1, Tyler Huntley. I love Tyler Huntley this week. I don't think the drop-off from Lamar is as significant as people think. He's got a ton of rushing upside still. He's number 1 for me. Number 2, Jared Goff. I've decided I'm going to be slightly on the Goff side. I think the scenarios where they are trailing and have to throw more are more likely still, despite being a home favorite in the game. I like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is going to be number 3, largely because I like the connection with Jamar Chase, and I think this team is hitting on all cylinders right now. Really love them. Running
Yeah.
back, Derrick Henry.
For the record,
Go ahead.
I got to say, I endorse all 3 of those. On Tuesday, Mike, I told you, and I'm so glad you brought up Derrick Henry first because he's probably going to be in pretty much all my lineups. But I told everybody I didn't think I was going to be on Tyler Huntley. I just full disclosure, like this is part of the reason I love the Thursday show. I'm going to have to put him in some lineups because, Mike, I'm convinced that when you said it might not be a big drop off from Lamar, I mean, and it is a drop off, obviously, but it might not be that significant. And I think I'm even against a Pittsburgh defense that's been playing, flying around a little bit, especially if TJ Watt plays. I really do like that play. I like all 3 of those quarterbacks quite a bit. Those are probably my 3 favorite 2 in a different order, but those are probably my 3 favorite 2. And Geno Smith is somewhere lingering in that range as well.
Yeah. And I will say, 3 or 4 weeks ago now, maybe more than that, 4 weeks ago, I almost had a 6-figure day with Sam Ehlinger scoring 4 fantasy points. So you can get there with certain quarterbacks. We like quarterbacks like Huntley that have some upside with their legs. So that's where
absolutely.
I'm going. All right, let's move to running back. Derrick Henry, number 1, just absolute smash spot for him. 7,900. You get the discount. This is the matchup he should be $9,000 in, not some of the others. So I love Derrick Henry. Number 2, I messed around a little bit with it. It looks like because I'm going to play Huntley, I'll get some more exposure here. It's going to be Dalvin Cook. I like Dalvin Cook in this matchup. The usage is there. He can score in so many different ways. This projects as a really good spot for him. And then we'll go former Minnesota Viking and Raider and Saint and wherever else he's played, and Baltimore Raven, Latavius Murray. We're going Denver Broncos.
Wow.
Look, they're going to be playing catch up. He is the guy there. I think he has 5 catches in the passing game here against Kansas City. I don't think a lot of people are going to go to it. I like the spot for Latavius Murray.
Okay.
Yeah,
And before you hit receiver, I do want to answer Oliver Orr's question. You might be late to the party here because we actually covered Chris Moore at some length. So you said you asked, how do you feel about Chris Moore in GPPs if Nico Collins is out? It looks like Nico Collins is going to be out. We like Chris Moore a lot in that case at 3,400. Honestly, we know Brandon Cooks is out. I think it's possible I play Chris Moore even if Nico Collins is in. So, but either way, I like Chris Moore quite a bit at 3,400. So Oliver, if you're new, hit the like button. Thanks for your question. Mike, now let's go to your top 3 receivers.
Top 3 receivers. Number 1, we're going to keep it chalky here. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Love him in this matchup. The volume is there. Number 2, Jamar Chase. And because everything is getting very expensive, number 3, Chris Moore. I literally played him last week in 2 of the 5 lineups. I like Chris Moore again. You can play Kendall Hinton. You can play Philip Dorsett. It's one of those 3. I think that you're going to need to play them if you're trying to build lineups the way that Sia and I are going to this week. You're going to want to play one of those 3. So I'll give them all to you. But again, at wide receiver, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Chris Moore. And then after the Chris Moore, you can either play Dorsett or Kendall Hinton. Okay.
And tight end, your top 3.
Top 3 at tight end. Let's go Mark Andrews, mostly because I'm pairing him with Tyler Huntley. Not a lot of people want to play Mark Andrews for one. Not a lot are going to want to play Tyler Huntley. They're certainly not playing them together. I like it a lot. Greg Dulcich, number 2. Everyone's going to play him. Not necessarily a free square, but on a slate where you need value, he's going to be incredibly popular. Number 3, Austin Hooper for the Tennessee Titans.
Ooh.
This is a call out that I like. I actually don't have any issue playing him in the same lineup as Derrick Henry. You might want to not, but I don't have a problem doing it. Treylon Burks potentially out in this game. Hooper is someone that still has some chemistry with Ryan Tannehill. Their passing game doesn't really exist. Without Burks, it could be a situation where we see a lot of Derrick Henry, a lot of looking in the direction of Austin Hooper. Just a little call out there. I think Austin Hooper could have 15 fantasy points because he lands in the end zone here.
All right. And I know that Noah Fant was somewhere on your radar at that 4th
honorable
position.
mention, Noah Fant, right after Austin Hooper.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. So that's your top 3 at each position. And I'll do my cheat sheet, Mike. Then we'll do yours. And then we'll just touch on Showdown just for a second. Of course, that's tonight's game. We got at the stack for me. It's Jared Goff, a cheap, inexpensive 5,600, to Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7,800. Value play is going to be Chris Moore for me. The chalk play is going to be Derrick Henry. We've talked about him at length. And then my contrarian play, and you know what? It turns out it's not that contrarian after all, because Mike, you spoke to the fact that he could be as high as 10%. So it was going to be DJ Moore. It is DJ Moore right now, because I don't want to change it now. But when we actually release our cheat sheet, I might have somebody else in there. That doesn't mean I don't like DJ Moore. I still like him, but I'd probably rather pick somebody whose ownership percentage looks to be tracking more in that like 4 to 5% range rather than the 9 to 10% range. So stack Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown, value Chris Moore, chalk Derrick Henry, contrarian DJ Moore, and finally my fade is going to be Saquon Barkley. It's not because he's banged up and he was limited in practice today, although that certainly helps. I just don't like Saquon Barkley much in this matchup. He's a fade for me at 8,000. He's just not going to fit into any of my lineups. Mike, your cheat sheet.
Stack Tyler Huntley to Mark Andrews. Value play. I don't want to double up on the value play. Chris Moore is my favorite value play. I want those of you who are at least watching it to get that message across. But because we're not going to double up on it, I will say Kendall Hinton, because I will be sprinkling in some Kendall Hinton as well. I think it's an interesting direct pivot away from Dulcich, who is going to be super popular. Obviously not playing the same position, but it still works. Chalk play, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm not going to get super cute there. He's going to be in some of my lineups, so I like him quite a bit. Contrarian play, I mentioned Tyler Lockett. I think this is a fantastic spot for Tyler Lockett. Projects as the number one individual wide receiver cornerback matchup on the week. I think it's a great spot for him. And then my fade, there are a number of ways I can go with this one. I wanted to get a little aggressive with it. We're going to fade Garrett Wilson. He's still less than $6,000, coming off excellent games, being paired with Mike White, obvious trailing game script. Like, there's all the volumes been there. Like, all the reasons you typically don't want to fade someone. I'm going to fade Garrett Wilson in this spot. I think it could be a tough day. I think that at a price point up to $6,000, you're really looking for 100 yards and a touchdown to pay that off. And I think that he has one of those frustrating 4 for 45 and no score kind of day. So I'm going to fade Garrett Wilson.
Okay, fair enough. And that makes sense now that he's 5,900. I'll probably still have a little bit of Garrett Wilson, but I guess it's Tyler Lockett at 6,500. To me, it's find the money to pay up to Tyler Lockett rather than playing Garrett Wilson at Buffalo. Okay, so we got showdown tonight, Mike. A couple thoughts, maybe contrarian players or players that people aren't really thinking of when they're filling out their showdown lineups. How do you think this game is going to go? We know the Raiders are slightly big favorites at the Rams. I'm not even sure who's playing for the Rams at quarterback. It looks like it's probably going to be Wolford, but if it's not, it's going to be Baker Mayfield with 48 hours to learn the playbook. I mean, even good quarterbacks with 48 hours to learn the playbook probably won't play well in any NFL game, but bad quarterbacks, it just makes it that much worse. So showdown plays, how do you think this game is going to go?
Yeah, I mean, showdown plays, look, you want Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams in your lineup for sure. Really at all costs, get them in there, heavy volume for both. I think you really want Daniel Carlson, the kicker, as well. Kickers are so important on showdown slates. He routinely puts up 10 fantasy points. Go find me anyone on the Rams side that routinely puts up 10 fantasy points. You really can't do it. So I like both kickers, frankly. In a lot of lineups, you have to have, every lineup you must have one player from each team minimum, right? So several of my top lineups have either Matt Gay, their kicker, or Tutu Atwell is the only player on the Rams side with 5-1 Raiders stacks. Being you get Derek Carr, you get Devontae Adams, you get Josh Jacobs, you get the kicker, and then potentially one other spot. You're going to play Keelan Cole, you're going to play Tutu Atwell and Matt Gay, things like that. That's basically what some of your builds will look like.
And in some of the more popular names like Higbee or Van Jefferson or Cam Akers, are they pretty much out of all of your builds, or is there one of those three at least that you're like, all right, I'll speculate on him?
They're mostly out of the builds. I'm mostly, again, just playing the kicker, and Tutu Atwell would be the most popular. Very minimal exposure to Higbee and Jefferson and Kyron Williams. Trying to look. It's Brandon Powell if he's active. But yeah, it's mostly Tutu Atwell and their kicker, Matt Gay. I do have about 30% exposure to those two.
Okay. And Derek Ram says, dang it, that was my sneaky play. You nailed my Tutu play as well, he says. Bruno says, thanks, guys. Hope you nailed it. I hope we nailed it too. And we're going to find out if we nailed it on Tuesday when we do our recap of week 14 and when we look at our early pricing for week 15. We're getting up there. Everybody enjoy football while it's going, right? Because, in a couple months, we're not going to have football, and that's going to be really sad. But you'll always have FFT DFS. We'll always be there for you. We're there for you in the offseason too, if you don't recall. So, Mike, any final words heading into this Week 14 slate? Any final sage advice for the listeners?
Just stay tuned to injuries. If you're following us on Sportsline, whether you have the Sportsline subscription, you'll be able to see my final player pool projections, all that. If you don't, you still want to watch the show. Sia will be on the show right before kickoff. I'm sure you will update any last minute info there. And like you said, enjoy the football. You might think this Thursday game is horrible. This Rams team plays the Broncos on Christmas Day.
Ooh, ouch.
That one could be a bad one. This one's not that bad.
Wow. Not a very Merry Christmas there. So good advice from Mike. And by the way, I'll be on the early edge tonight to preview that Thursday night football game in an hour and a half at 7:30. We have our prop show tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And again, Mike referenced it, the final bets show, where I actually try to incorporate all my prop bets, but some last minute DFS advice, maybe some weather that's going to come into play. So definitely tune into that 12 o'clock on the Early Edge YouTube channel. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for hitting the like button and reviewing this podcast. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, sign up for the FFT DFS contest. It's only $5. Get in there now before you get locked out. It's only 200 deep. Everybody, thanks for watching. This is Fantasy Football Today DFS. We will see you on Tuesday at 5 o'clock.